The Andal ships landed on the shores of the Vale with a full cargo of iron weapons and righteousness. Conquistadors and crusaders wearing a seven-pointed star, they made the choice not to integrate into the First Man culture, but to override it, or if not, wipe it out. The warrior and the father would not allow conversion to the First Man religion, but annihilation of the old gods, if not the people. The generals secured the Vale, but when the Andals set out from the Bloody Gate toward the Riverlands, the generals gave way to the Septons as the plan makers. The faith of the Seven is a larger topic, but during this time they would have trained missionaries to take control of the power of the continent. Shy of 2,000 years ago, with their pulpits and training materials of religion and cultural supremacy in hand, they set out transitioning from force to persuasion. They began to fight the lords and their keeps from within their families. This was the surest way to break the backs of the old gods. When the Andals had conquered the Vale, instead of remaining the salad of separate peoples in harmony, they opted for the bouillon of homogeneous integration by marriage. Septas educated women on the necessity of avoiding the seven hells by raising their children in the faith, and in 2 or so generations, the families no longer identified by their First Men blood, but by their Andal blood. If you look at maps of the ruling families at the start of the Andal Invasion and centuries later, when Aegon I was on Dragonstone, the names are mostly the same. There was a lot of saber rattling at this time, but though the Andals were a jingoistic power-seeking lot, the remaining families in power did not become Andals by combat. Let's apply critical thinking to the teachings of the Septons via the Maesters and take a look at the path from the Bloody Gate. Time has blurred the specific memories of dates for the events of this time, but we can look at the stories in another context. It has been many years that the Andals had control of the wealth of the Vale before they set their sights on the Riverlands. Still using violence as they did in the Vale to also conquer the Riverlands, they first ganged up on the Mudds. It is said Christopher IV Mudd won 99 of his 100 battles. His crypt at Old Stones, as the small folks call it, is described by Catelyn in Storm of Swords. They also say his son Christopher V was unequal to the task and was the last of his line. I wonder why he was unequal and how young Christopher V was when he became king of the rivers and the hills upon his father's death. Infants make poor generals. This was one of the last kingdoms the Andals gained by military conquest. Another of these final battles is the Great Battle of Bitter River, where the Brackens of Stonehenge and the Blackwoods of Raventree Hall made common cause against the invaders, only to be shattered by the charge of 777 Andal knights and 7 Septons bearing the seven-pointed star of the faith upon their shields. The Brackens then converted to the faith, while the Blackwoods remained with the old gods. Time alters histories in favor of the victorious. Credit would be taken when advantageous, like Columbus, who never set foot on North America, or the Vikings hundreds of years earlier, who met the Native Americans already present. In this same era, one Andal, remembered in legend as Erig the Kinslayer, came across the great hill of Highheart. There, while under the protection of the kings of the First Men, the children of the forest had tended to the mighty carved weirwoods that crowned it, 31 according to Archmaester Laurent in his manuscript Old Places of the Trident. When Eric's warriors sought to cut down the trees, the First Men are said to have fought beside the children, but the might of the Andals was too great. Though the children and First Men made a valiant attempt to defend their holy grove, all were slain. The tale-tellers now claim that the ghosts of the children still haunt the hill by night. To this day, rivermen shun the place. When it comes to routing the children of the forest and sending them north, there is little to corroborate these stories. Andals take credit for the destruction of Highheart, but I always felt that this action seems a better fit as the impetus for the wars leading to the Pact centuries earlier, the First Men cutting down a main weirwood server node, panicking the children of the forest into creating the others. Not reacting at the Andals' time like they did before the Pact to something so momentous tends to belie this story. After the Pact, the First Men turned to the children to win their battles. Andals tried to conquer the peninsula and take Crackclaw Point, a dismal land of bogs and pine barrens, but they were defeated by their lack of knowledge of the area. The stories of this time have the First Men and children fighting together to victory. only later to have the first men lords marry Andal ladies who would convert the faith and national identities of the families. The Quiet Isle is situated near places that the children won magical battles. Historically, it was infiltrated by a misanthropic follower of the Seven 2,000 years ago. A user of magic that followed the Seven performed wonders, but according to the Septons, the Green Seers, Red Priests, Drowned Men were all mistaken in the existence of magic. Septon Maribald smiled. It is called the Hermit's Hole. The first holy man to find his way here lived therein, and worked such wonders that others came to join him. That was 2,000 years ago, they say. They attempted to take the Stormlands. The Andals established themselves on Cape Wrath, but King Baldric I Durrandon proved expert at setting them one against the other, and King Durin the 21st took the unprecedented step of seeking out the remaining children of the forest in the caves and hollow hills where they had taken refuge, and making common cause with them against the men from beyond the sea. This Weirwood alliance dealt the Andals a series of stinging defeats and checked the decline of the Storm Kings for a time. The first men continued to seek help from the children of the forest and successfully fought back the Andal combatants, but were eventually supplanted with dollars and dowries. King Malden IV took an Andal maiden as his wife, as did his son Durin the 24th, Durin Halfblood. Andal war chiefs became lords and petty kings, wed the daughters of the Storm Lords, and gave them their own daughters in return, did fealty for their lands, and swore their swords to the Storm Kings. Led by King Ormond III and his queen, the Stormlanders put aside their old gods and took up the gods of the faith of the Seven. The Andals came late to the Westerlands, long after they had taken the Vale. Andal army after Andal army were defeated, so war weariness and attrition decided their peace through the marriage bed. They took care to demand a price for this largesse. The sons and daughters of the Andal lords, so ennobled, were taken as wards and fosterlings to serve as squires and pages and cupbearers in Casterly Rock, and as hostages. Iron Islanders' culture respects seafarers and opportunists. The arrival of the Andals in the Seven Kingdoms only hastened the decline of the Iron Islands, for unlike the first men who had gone before, the Andals were fearless seamen with longships of their own as swift and seaworthy as any the Ironborn could build. Successive waves of Andal adventurers descended on the islands, often in alliance with one or another faction of the Ironborn themselves. The Andals intermarried with some of the ancient families of the islands and brought others to a bloody end with sword and axe. House Grey-Iron was among those destroyed. The last Iron King, Ragnar II, was brought down when the Orkwoods, Drums, Whores, and Greyjoys made common cause against him, supported by a host of Andal pirates, sellswords, and warlords. Asha smiled, and Miss the First Kingsmoot called in, "How long has it been, Nuncle?" 4,000 years if Harrod can be believed, half that if you accept Maester Deniston's arguments and questions. Thank you for taking the time to watch my video. Please like, comment, and subscribe to appease the YouTube gods of the internet. Take care.